Shalom everyone and welcome to Busisiwe, which is Baruch in Hebrew. My name is Abigail. Today I would like us to talk about a topic that a lot of people, when it is mentioned, they say it doesn't matter. And that topic is who the true YSHRAL, otherwise known as Israel, is. And where is the promised land, the true promised land? Now, the reason I'm saying that we need to talk about this is that some people say it doesn't matter who the true Yisrael, otherwise known as Israel, is. It doesn't matter where the promised land is. They say that they are spiritual Israel, and when they say so, they quote Shaul, otherwise known as Paul, where he says, "In Mashiach there is neither male nor female, Jew nor Greek, bond or free." And then to that extent, and then they say it doesn't matter. And I've just quoted from the book of Galatians chapter 3 from verse 26 to 29, where then most people then they would respond to say it doesn't matter who the true Yisrael is or where the promised land is, because for you are all sons of Yahuwah through belief in Mashiach Yahusha. For as many of you as were immersed in Mashiach have put on Mashiach. There is not Yahudi nor Greek, there is no slave nor free, there is no male nor female, for you are all one in Mashiach Yahusha. And if you are in Mashiach, then you are seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. This is the verse that most people will quote and then dismiss any discussion whatsoever with regards to knowing who the true Yisrael is and where the true promised land, the land that Yahuwah promised to Abram and his seed. My response though is it does matter. And we're going to go through a number of scriptures that prove that indeed it does matter, because even the word tells us that when in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. So you can't just quote Galatians chapter 3 verse 26 to 29 out of context, nor quote it in isolation. It has to correspond to so many other scriptural reference that can then settle a matter. This is then the purpose of today's teaching, to say it truly does matter who the true Yisrael is, otherwise known as Israel, and it truly matters, it matters also where is the land that Yahuwah promised to Abram. We're going to start firstly by what Yahusha said. Yahusha said, I'm quoting this from the book of Yahukanan, otherwise known as John chapter 8 verse 32. He said, "The truth will make us free." Now, if Yahusha then tells us, because he says that the truth will make you free, other version says the truth will set you free, but the one that I'm reading from, it says the truth will make you free. Now, if then the truth is what will make you free, then it matters to know the truth. It totally matters. Otherwise, Yahusha would not have mentioned that the truth will make you free if it didn't matter. And another thing is, if the truth makes you free, it makes you free from what? It makes you free from lies. It makes you free from deception. This statement on its own, it presupposes that there are lies that we are living under. There is a deception that we are living under, and it is only the truth that will then deliver us from this deception. It is the truth that will then deliver us from the lie that we've been born into. So it truly matters. So this is one reason amongst the others that we're going to go through, that it truly matters to know who the true Yisrael is and where the true land that was promised to Abram is. Now, another statement also to make is that Yahusha said that and this was written by Yahukanan, otherwise known as John, and we find this in the book of Yahukanan, otherwise known as John, in the book of Revelation. So let me just say that again. All right. If it didn't matter who the true YSHRAL is, Yahusha would not have spoken about certain people who call themselves what they are not. He didn't just spoke about the liars, but also mentioned what would happen to the liars and the true Yahudim. And we find the statement where Yahusha says this in the book of Revelation chapter 3 verse 9 as recorded by Yahukanan. So this is very, very, very important in adding to the evidence, in adding to the emphasis, in adding to the importance of knowing the truth. Because Yahusha specifically says that there are certain people who call themselves what they are not. So if you then say it doesn't matter who the true YSHRAL is, what are you saying about the statement that Yahusha made? And I'm going to read, let us read in the book of Revelation where this statement made by Yahusha was recorded. In the book of Revelation chapter 3 verse 9, it says, "See, I am giving up those of the assembly of Shatan who say they are the Yahudim and are not, but lie. See, I am making them come and worship before your feet and to know that I have loved you." Another version says, "See, I am giving up those of the synagogue of Satan." One version says the assembly of Satan. Another version says a synagogue of Satan. These people of the synagogue of Satan, they call themselves Jews. And they are not, but they are lying. It's a lie. And this is a direct quote from Yahusha HaMashiach himself. He says, "See, I'm making these liars, I'm making them come and worship before your feet and to know that I have loved you." So we see two kinds of people in this Revelation chapter 3 verse 9. The two kinds of people that Yahusha is referring to, he's mentioning the liars, those that call themselves the Yahudim or the Jews, yet they are not. Those who are of the synagogue of Satan, the synagogue of Satan. So Yahusha is even going beyond just saying these people are calling themselves Jews, but they are not. He is going beyond saying that they are calling themselves the Yahudim, but they are not. He in fact called them the assembly of Satan. He calls them the synagogue of Satan. That's very deep. That's very direct. So how then would you say it doesn't matter if Yahusha is so, he doesn't beat around the bush concerning these people, these liars, not only who they are, but who they belong to. Their assembly is the assembly of Satan. Their synagogue is the synagogue of Satan. Their assembly is the assembly of Satan. You have to revisit your position as to it doesn't matter, because it matters. Otherwise, Yahushua HaMashiach would not have said such strong words. And he doesn't talk about these liars only, or the people that are imposters, because an imposter is someone who pretends and make himself to be that which he is not. It's an imposter. So he's not only addressing the imposters, he's not only addressing the liars, he's not only addressing the assembly of imposters, he's not only addressing the synagogue of imposters, but he's addressing those who do not know who they are. He also addresses those who do not know the truth, and yet, and that's why he said it, that the truth will make you free. Then he says, to those who have been deceived, those who have been lied to by these liars, those who have been deceived by these deceivers, he is saying, I'm going to make these liars come and worship before your feet, you true Yahudim, you true YSHRAL, and to know that I have loved you. So why would you then say it doesn't matter who YSHRAL is? Why would you say that at the end of the day we're spiritual YSHRAL? Yahusha doesn't talk about the spiritual liars here, as there's no such thing as spiritual liars. He doesn't talk about the spiritual synagogue of Satan. He doesn't talk about the spiritual assembly. He's talking about the natural, real thing that is happening. So it is for this one of the many reasons that I'm going to state in this teaching, in today's teaching, as I say, it is important that you know the truth, because the truth will make you free from lies and free from deception. Secondly, Yahuwah himself, because remember the statement that we just looked on, it was mentioned by Yahusha, Yahuwah's son. But Yahuwah also talks about something to the effect of knowing the truth. He says, my people have perished for lack of knowledge. He says, my people have perished. It's already past tense. It has already happened. He says, my people have perished. In other version, it says, my people have been destroyed for lack of knowledge. And this we find, and Yahuwah spoke this through the mouth of Yahusha, otherwise known as Hosea. So we'll find this statement that Yahuwah made through the mouth of Hosea or Hosea in the book of Hosea, or otherwise known as Hosea chapter 4 verse 6. So Hosea or Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, that's where Yahuwah said that my people have perished for lack of knowledge. Note something, it's already past tense. It's not saying that they will perish for lack of knowledge. So they are in the situation that they're in. They are in the position of deception. They're in the position of being lied to because of ignorance, because of lack of knowledge. So you cannot continue to say it doesn't matter. It matters. And Yahusha said, I quote from the book of Luke chapter 8 verse 17. Yahusha says, for whatever is hidden shall be revealed, and whatever is secret shall be known and come to light. This is found in the book of Luke chapter 8 verse 17. I'm going to repeat. Yahusha says, whatever is hidden shall be revealed, whatever is secret shall be known and come to light. So most of the deception that is out there has been kept as secret for so many, not even decades, for so many thousands of years, as we're going to be going through this information as to when did this whole deception happen, when did this lie happen, who did it, who colluded with who, and how did it come to light to us. There was no way that this truth wouldn't come out, because Yahusha said it, that whatever it is that is hidden shall be revealed, and whatever it is that is in secret shall be known and come to light. And that's why he also then told his disciples, and is telling us these days, whatever it is that I speak to you in secret, you must shout it on the rooftop. So the purpose of why we're having this teaching, why we're having this discussion, is that Yahusha has revealed this information to us. Yahuwah has revealed this information to us. Therefore, we have a duty to proclaim as the watchman. We have a duty to proclaim as the mouthpiece of Yahuwah, to say, enough is enough. We've been lied to for so long. We've been deceived for so long. Here is the truth. And when you accept this truth, you will be free from lies. You will be free from deception. And also it says in the word that in the last days the knowledge of the esteem of Yahuwah will fill the earth as the water covers the sea. So we are living in the end times. We are living in the last days where the knowledge of the esteem of Yahuwah fills the earth. The knowledge of who Yahuwah is, who he made a covenant with is, where the covenant that he made with which people, of what land, and what's the implication of that covenant. That information is coming up. That information is now filling the earth as the waters covers the sea. Now, going again to say it matters who the true YSHRAL is, the true seed that was promised to Abraham, and the true land that was promised to his seed. If it wasn't important, why would Yahusha say this in the book of Revelation, that the truth, if the truth did not matter? And the reality is this, and we have to accept it. There is no way that you can speak the truth without exposing the lies. The two goes hand in hand. Automatically, when you declare the truth, automatically when the truth is being revealed, the lie is exposed. And when that happens, the liars will not want it. The liars will not like it. The liars will try to stop it in so many ways that they can, because it is exposing their lies. It's exposing their deception. And he then speaks of about the true Yahudim. That's why I mentioned earlier on that Revelation chapter 3 verse 9 does not only talk about the liars, but it also talks about who the true Yahudim is. That verse is twofold. It talks about the liars who are of the synagogue of Satan, and then it talks about that the people that I love, they will be revealed, and that these liars will come down and worship before the true Yahudim and bow down before the true Yahudim. That is why it is important. So I urge you to hear the matter before dismissing it. Solomon in the book of Proverbs, or otherwise as known as Shalom, he talks about this thing that it is only a stupid person, or a silly person rather, that dismisses a matter without hearing it. Any wise person will have to hear the matter before dismissing it. So an unwise, I think that's the proper word to use. An unwise person is the one that dismisses a matter before hearing it. I therefore urge you that you be wise, that you listen to the matter and not dismiss it before hearing it. So we're going to be looking at 4 points in this teaching, where we're going to be addressing the argument of being spiritual Israel. Why this argument of being spiritual Israel doesn't hold. Number 1, you cannot separate the spiritual from the natural. That's the first point. You cannot separate the spiritual from the natural. And you say, what do you mean? A living being is made up of the breath, which is the ruh, or the spirit of Yahuwah, and it's made up of the body, which is the natural aspect. Therefore, the life as human beings, the life as living beings is actually made up of both the spiritual aspect and the natural aspect. And then you're going to say to me, quote the scripture. Where are you saying, where does that come from? Let's look at the book of Parashith, otherwise known as Genesis. So if you look at the book of Parashith, or Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, it says, and Yahuwah Alua formed the man out of the dust from the ground. So the dust from the ground, he formed man. So this is now the natural aspect, the flesh aspect, natural that you can see and touch. He formed it out of the dust of the ground. But now you have this flesh, this body, but it has no life in it. And then it continues to say, and he breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and the man became a living being. So the flesh on its own, the natural on its own, wasn't a living being. It became a living being once Yahuwah breathed into the man's nostril, and he breathed into his nostril the breath of life. He breathed to his nostril his ruach, his spirit, and then the man became the living being. If you go to the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, we talk about, we read there about a prophecy where the ruach of Yahuwah took Ezekiel to an open space. And in this space, there were bones, a lot of bones, dry bones. And then the Ruach of Yahuwah said to Ezekiel, Son of man, do you think that these bones will live? And Ezekiel replied and said, Yes, Yahuwah, yes, you know all things. And if you say they would live, truly they will live. And then he then said, Yahuwah then said through his spirit, he then said, prophesy to these bones that they may live. And then he spoke. And then the book of in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, we then see the stages that there was then noise and there was a rattling and then that took place. But and then the bones became one, joining one bone over another, one bone over another. And then as it continued to prophesy, Yahuwah said, continue prophesying, speak to these bones. And then there was flesh on these bones. There was, I think it's called sinews on these bones. And then, but there was no life. So it was just a body, flesh, natural, without the ruach, without the spirit. There was no breath in it. And then he prophesied and speak the life of Yahuwah to this flesh, to these sinners, and then they became living being. This is exactly what we see happening in Ezekiel 38, as Yahuwah command Ezekiel to prophesy to the dry bones. That is what happened in the book of Barashith, chapter 2, verse 7, that there was first flesh, but flesh on its own was not a living being until the spiritual aspect, the spirit of Yahuwah, the ruach of Yahuwah was then breathed into the nostril, and then man became a living being. And this confirms the statement that I made earlier on, that a body without spirit is dead. So you cannot just say that we are only spiritual. There is no way, because if you think about that, then if you say we're only spiritual, there's a spirit without a body is a ghost. That we know. A spirit without a body is a ghost. And how do we see that? Or where do we see this? In the book of Matthew or Matthew chapter 14 from verse 25 to 26. You remember the time that his disciples, Yahusha's disciples, had started entering in the boat, and they had left him outside, and then he was walking on the water going, and it was, in fact, some scriptures says that he was about to pass them. And let's read. And then it says, and in the fourth watch of the Lila, or of the evening, Yahusha went to them walking on the sea. It actually says that he was walking on the sea. And when his disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it's a ghost. And from there they cried out loud, because they know that a natural person, a human being, cannot walk on water. It could only mean that this is a spirit. that has no flesh, that has no natural aspect to it, that it's actually walking on the water. And Yahusha said, no, it is I. So this then proves that the spirit without a body is actually a ghost. And then also the other aspect is that the body without the spirit, the flesh without the spirit is dead. And we see this also in the book of Jacob, otherwise known as James, where it says, for as the body without the ruach is dead, so also belief is dead without the works. So the body without the ruach of Yahuwah, the body without the spirit of Yahuwah is dead. So the two makes a living being. Hence, you cannot say, I'm only spiritual. There is no way that you can just say, I'm only spiritual, I'm only focusing on the spiritual YSHRAL. It doesn't matter the natural. A living being is made up of the natural, which was formed from the dust of the earth, and then the ruach, or the spirit of Yahuwah, which then the two together then made a living being. The absence of any of these two, you are dead. And that's why a lot of the time when people have been involved in so much in car accident, to the extent that what is supposed to be carrying you, because this body, this flesh is carrying the ruach, the spirit of Yahuwah, and that he breathed in you. So if then that container, that vessel, it's so destroyed, that's when your umphefumulo uyaphuma emzimbeni, your spirit leaves the body. This is another example in the natural. I hope that you understand. Another element also where we see Yahuwah talk about that, when he speaks to us, that he talks about both the spiritual aspect as well as the natural aspect. He commands us, and one of the examples then that where he talks about both the spiritual aspect and the natural aspect is in the case of circumcision. So Yahuwah commands us to do both the natural circumcision, which is on your foreskin of your body parts. Naturally, it has to be circumcised. But it does not only talk about the circumcision of the natural foreskin, but it also speaks of the spiritual circumcision. So it's not either or. You need both. And a lot of the time also when you talk about the circumcision, people jumped into the spiritual aspect. They say, no, we are spiritually circumcised, or and my heart is circumcised. And a lot of time Shaul is misquoted out of context. There is no way that Shaul will speak things that is against the Torah, against the law, because he was appointed to proclaim the message of Yahuwah, who operates within his laws, within his instructions. He cannot separate his word from him. Now, this is an example from scripture that shows that we need both the spiritual as well as the natural circumcision. Obviously, starting with the natural, this is where the circumcision was first introduced, which is part of the covenant that Yahuwah had, or the terms of the covenant rather, that he mentioned to Abraham to say, listen, my terms of the covenant is that I promise you, I'm going to give you a seed, and your seed is going to be as many as, if you could count the number of stars in the sky, so shall your seed be. If you could count the number of grains on the seashore, that shall be as many as the seed that I shall give to you. And when we talk about this, he mentioned that this was his side of the covenant, that not only will I give you the seed, but this seed that I'm going to give you Kings will come from this seed. Nations will come from this seed. So this was the covenant part of Yahuwah. And then he also said, I'm going to provide land for the seed. Because now if you think about it, why would Yahuwah give seed of such a great number? Excuse me, if we were to count the stars in the sky, that's how the number of the seed of Abraham would be. If we were to count the grains, the granulars, sand granulars on the seashore, that's how it is numbered. But he's talking about huge multiple number of people. So where are these people going to sit? They need land. And they don't just need small land, because as many as they are, they need to live freely in this land. So he then promised them this land, and we'll go through the next teaching on the borders. When he said, this land that I'm going to give you is going to be from this particular river to this particular river, covering this particular borders or nations, or what we would term it countries in our times. But it was big. It matters. The whole point, if you could miss anything else that I've said today, is it matters who the seed, the true seed that was promised by Yahuwah to Abraham, who that seed is. And it matters that land that was given, because it was not just only promised, but it was given. And we're going to go through that in another teaching, where how, as they were led by Yahusha, otherwise known as Joshua, Yahusha the son of Nun, how they then entered that land, how they then captured that land. It wasn't without a fight, but Yahuwah gave them a favor. He gave them power. He gave them ability to conquer the enemies that they were, or the occupants of that land at that particular time. So we have now, let's now look at the natural circumcision. It is found in the book of Bereshit, or otherwise known as Genesis, chapter 17, verse 10. And it reads, "This is my covenant which you guard between me and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised." So Yahuwah is making a covenant on his side. He says, listen, Abraham, my part of the covenant, I am going to give you the seed. And I'm going to cause the seed to be exceedingly fruitful. And I'm going to cause the seed to multiply. Kings will come from the seed, and nations will come from the seed. I'll give them land from this place to this place. This is your part of the covenant, because covenant is, simply put, it is an agreement. An agreement is between parties. There is no agreement within one individual, within a singular party. No. The agreement is at least between two people. There must be a minimum of two people for any agreement to be of effect. So there are terms and conditions on both sides. If any of the parties do not fulfill their part of the covenant, or they are part of the agreement, then the agreement falls apart, or the agreement lapses. And this we know about Yahuwah. He is not a man that he should lie. There is no way that he wouldn't fulfill his part of the covenant. So the covenant, the aspect or the part that Abraham had to fulfill was to make sure that his seed, that the male child gets circumcised. That is the natural circumcision. And we see it later also in the book of Bereshit, or book of Genesis, later also in chapter 17, that after he entered into that covenant with Yahuwah, that very same day, immediately after that agreement, immediately that very same day, he circumcised himself. He was 99 years of age at that time. Imagine an old man circumcising himself at that age. He circumcised and the son that he had through Hagar, an Egyptian woman, and his name was Ishmael. And Ishmael at the time, he was 13. He circumcised him at the age of 13. And all his household that he had bought with the price, that he also circumcised them, which is what the Torah or the instruction gives us, that those that are in your household you have bought with your money, that they belong to you, they have to obey the same instructions as Yahuwah said. There is one Torah for the native as well as those that sojourn with the native. So the natural circumcision took place. I always say that was a bloody day because there was a lot of blood everywhere when that circumcision was taken, but it was natural. But it's not only natural. He speaks of the spiritual circumcision, and this is found in the book of Jeremiah, otherwise known as Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 4. Jeremiah or Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 4, it says, circumcise yourself to Yahuwah and take away the foreskins of your heart. That is then the spiritual aspect, because you're not going to circumcise your heart, otherwise you're going to die, you know. So it talks about the spiritual aspect, that it's not only about boasting and proving that naturally down there below you are circumcised, but your heart still has the foreskin. The heart is hardened, that the word of Yahuwah cannot penetrate through your heart so that it can be able to bear fruits. Your heart is hardened. It's not circumcised. You need to circumcise your heart as well, just as you circumcise your natural aspect. It says, you men of Yehuda and inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my wrath come forth like fire and burn with none to quench it because of the evil of your actions. He calls us that we have to take away the foreskins of our hearts. And then the aspect then of the circumcision, the spiritual circumcision, then automatically it also apply to the female gender, because we would not have done the commandment, the instruction concerning the natural circumcision of the foreskin. Actually, Yahuwah stated that from the 8 days old, a boy child must be circumcised from 8 days old. Then a male child must be circumcised. So I've heard of cultures where females are circumcised. I don't know how they do it, but it is unscriptural. There's no way that Yahuwah speaks about females or female being circumcised. It is a male child that must be circumcised. If you couldn't circumcise them, like in this case of Abraham, that he obviously wasn't circumcised when he was 8 days of age, because he was in Babylon for that matter at that time, and the covenant had not been made at that time. As soon as he became aware of that covenant, he had to circumcise himself. So there's no such thing that says it is too late. Well, I've passed the 8 days, I'm already an adult. Abraham was 99 years and he circumcised his natural foreskin in compliance, in agreeing with the terms of the covenant. His son Ishmael was 13 of age. He circumcised him. Even when we go very forward to the extent of Moshe, when Moshe was about, otherwise known as Moses, Moshe was leaving Midian and with his wife Zipporah. He had 2 sons at the time, and Yahuwah met him on the way. He almost killed both the son and Moshe. Why? Because Moshe had not circumcised the boy. And the very same Moses whom Yahuwah had appointed to be the leader of his people, to be the one to deliver his people from Mitzrayim or Egypt into the promised land, to deliver them, the one that he used all the miracles, the 10 plagues that he showed forth in Egypt. He was prepared to kill him and to kill his son. Why? Because he had disobeyed him. He had not circumcised his son, because he was supposed to circumcise his son at the age of 8. And when the malak, or the messenger of Yahuwah, met him, it was Zipporah who immediately took a sharp stone and circumcised the boy there and then. It wasn't the responsibility of a woman to be circumcising a male child, but she had to step in, otherwise she was going to lose both the husband and the child. And at that time, he was way out, over 8 years old, sorry, 8 days rather, 8 days old. And that's why the wrath of Yahuwah was upon Masha, or Moses, to say, why are you disobeying me? So please don't use Paul, don't use Shaul to justify your disobedience. Don't. Find a way of asking Yahuwah to help you if you're finding his way challenging you, but don't come with a justification that is misplaced. So these are the aspects where we see both the spiritual as well as the natural going hand in hand. In this regard, we're talking about circumcision. The other incident, when we also see the two going hand in hand, being the spiritual as well as the natural, is that Yahusha says that as he speaks to this woman by the waters, this is found in the book of Yahukanan chapter 4 verse 23, that this woman who was a Samaritan, she was saying that, what is it that you being a Yahudim want water from me, because you know that there is no abukho ubudlelwane between amaJuda nama Samaritans, or there is no relation between the Yahudim and the Samaritans. And then that conversation then led to verse 23, where Yahusha then tells this woman, he says, but the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in ruach and truth, for the Father also seeks such to worship him. Why was he saying this? The woman was saying, we, the Samaritans, we worship in this well where our father Jacob, otherwise known as Jacob, gave us. But you, the Yahudim, you say that the worship must take place in Jerusalem. And that's when then Yahusha said, listen, woman, it's not it's neither Jerusalem nor the well of Jacob, or the mountain where you're supposed to worship. For the Father seeks those who will worship in truth, and truth refers to the word, but not only in the word, but also in the ruach, or in spirit. So you need both. You need the spirit, you need the word. Even the word tells us that the word kills, but the spirit gives life. Because a lot of the times you find that people they bash others using the word, the very same word that is supposed to bring life to people. They use it to bash other people. We saw this with the Pharisees, and when they came and they said, they brought this woman who was caught. They say that she was caught in the very act. They quoted the word. They said the word says that the Torah of Moses says that such must be stoned. But clearly they were just, even how they are quoting the word, it was one-sided. It was not complete, because the Torah talks about that both must be stoned. The woman and the man. So if this woman was caught in the very act, clearly was not in the very act by herself. He was in the act with the person, with the man. So what happened to the man? Why is only the woman that is being brought to them? So this is the aspect that then Yahusha is addressing, where he then says that Yahuwah, or the Father, seeks such who will worship in spirit and in truth, the word and in spirit. It talks about that the Spirit gives life. The Spirit gives life. The Word is the one that, as I said earlier on, people are just being used to bash each other using the Word. As he says, the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. The letter of the Word. He talks about this also when he speaks about the commandments. He says, it has been said that whoever is caught in the adultery must be stoned. But I say to you, if any person looks at the woman and desire to have intimacy or intercourse with that woman, he has already committed it. So it's all has already happened spiritually. It's already happened in the heart. So you see the element of both, not just focusing on the letter, but that the letter goes hand in hand. What is the spirit of the letter? What is intended? What was meant for in the letter? That's why Yahusha had to come when he talks about that. He did not come to destroy the law or the Torah, but he came to fulfill it, because people had misunderstood it altogether. The Pharisees had misunderstood it altogether. They were only focusing on the letter. They were only focusing on the word, not the spiritual aspect of it. But at the same time, the spiritual on its own, you're going to be a cuckoo. You know, you're going to go mad like a spooky, that you said you had this vision or you had this word. Whatever vision that you say that you have had, it has to be in line with the word. That's the balance that we have. That's the protection that we have. When you say that Yahweh spoke to you either in a vision of the night, which normally comes in the form of a dream, or just a day vision, whatever he said to you, there's no way that it could be contrary to his word. The two must be aligned, and that's why then you're going to be having such prophecies that are just lies, or people's wishes, or people's speaking out of presumption, if they're not founded in the word. At anything, it must be tested by the word. And that's where then we see the importance of both the spirit and the natural aspect. So you cannot just say, I'm just a spiritual Israel. I'm just a spiritual Yisrael. I don't need to know the natural aspect. The two go together. The second part also that we're going to be looking at that confirms that we cannot only be focusing on the spiritual aspect is the principle of adoption. When one is adopted into a family or a group of people, that person that is adopted to a certain nation, a certain family that belongs to a particular nation, a certain people, a certain language, a family of a certain language, a family of certain culture, traditions, laws, practices that you have been adopted to. So you need to know where you've been adopted to, what are their practices, what are their culture, what are their laws, what is their language, because you have now become one as them. You must now speak their language. You must now do what they do and don't do what they do not do. You need to know the family that you are joined into. And talking about this aspect that you need to know and the family that you are joined into, because you must now speak their language. You become one with that language. We see this Jacob, otherwise known as Jacob, before he dies, as he speaks a blessing, as he baruchs his children, and this is found in the book of Barashith, otherwise known as Genesis chapter 48 verse 5. Barashith, or Genesis chapter 48 verse 5. It says, "Now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Mitzrayim or Egypt before I came to you in Mitzrayim, are mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine." Yes, they were born in Egypt. Yes, they're not biologically mine, but I'm adopting them, that they are gonna maintain the same status as my own, the same status as Reuben, the same status as Shimeon, the same status as my other sons. So it's important, therefore, to know what status are you now taking, what culture, what language are you taking. Sorry, I just got disrupted there with the noise as the recording is done. It's very, very important that you know the family into which you are joined into, because you are becoming one with that family. You are now taking the same status as that family. So if you then say, I am spiritual YSHRAL, you don't know YSHRAL's language, you don't know YSHRAL's laws and traditions, you don't know YSHRAL's culture, you don't know YSHRAL, you don't know anything about this family that you have been engrafted into, that you have been adopted into. You're lying to yourself. What are you following? Because you have to follow that which is being practiced in the family in which you have been adopted into. So this is another point that addresses that it is incorrect to say, I am just spiritual Israel. I don't need to know anything about the natural Israel. Or that I don't need to know about the promised land, or the land that was promised to Israel, because anything that was spoken concerning the seed, it also applies to the land in which they live in. Because you see this as an example that when people are transgressing against Yahuwah, the land itself suffers. The land itself suffers as a result of transgression. That's when you see in Mizrim, the land of Israel was cursed because of stubbornness of the people, in this case being Pharaoh, the leader of the country. The whole economy was collapsed to its knees. So you cannot separate the people of the land from the land itself. If you know the people, you must know the land, because whatever happens to the people also, it applies to the land. The scripture, I think it's in the book of Romans, it talks about the nature itself. It yearns for the bringing, for the revelation of the sons of the Most High. Why is the nature itself yearning? Because it has also been found to be in bondage as a result of the sin committed by the sons of Yahuwah. So if the sons of Yahuwah are being revealed and they walk in obedience, the land also benefits. So you have to know both the people of the land as well as the land itself. Yahuwah continuing to talk about Manasseh and Ephraim. He says that in verse 19, and his seed, referring to Ephraim, his seed is to become the completeness of the nations. Remember that the whole promise was about that nations would come from Abraham. If nations will come from Abraham, there will be the nation that will be engrafted into the seed of Abraham, and that will then become the completeness of nations, the completeness of the Goyim. Jacob prophesied about this adoption, prophesied about this engrafting that was going to take place. But you need to know, where are you being engrafted into? Where are you being adopted to? The people that you've been adopted to or engrafted into, their language, their laws, because you're going to become one as them. We're going to go to another aspect there where we say you might be thinking that you are a Gentile, meanwhile you're actually the true YSHRAL. As Yahusha spoke about that, there are those that call themselves Yahudim and they are not. So clearly there are also those that think that they are not Yahudim, and in actual fact they are. There are clearly those who call themselves YSHRAL, yet they are not. They are imposters, which then by default, as I said, when you expose the truth or when you reveal and speak the truth, automatically it exposes the lie, that will then know who the true YSHRAL is. And where is the true promised land is. You might just be of the seed of YSHRAL. legit, like genuinely, but you didn't know all the time because of the lies. So you are not only just adopted, you are not just engrafted or grafted, but you are the seed. You are YSHRAL, but you didn't know. Hence, the truth will make you free. I talk about this so many times to my children, and I said to them that assume that I was we were staying with helpers, servants in the house, and somehow the servants, thousands of years after I've departed, we have departed as parents, they actually make a lie and say that they are the heirs of the house, and then make my children to feel and to believe that they are actually the servants. They're the ones that they've been adopted into the family. Meanwhile, that's not the case. It's a reality that people need to become aware of. What are your rights in Yahuwah? So that is the aspect, that the second one that speaks about the importance of knowing the family, the nation, the people that you have been adopted to, that it matters because they're not just spiritual people. They speak a natural language. They live and walk among natural people. They eat certain things. That's why Yahweh tells us in the book of Leviticus chapter 11 or Louis chapter 11, what's clean, what's unclean. Other people eat everything, but Yahweh specifically told his people, YSHRAL, that there's certain things that are not food to them. It's unclean. They must not eat them. So you need to, if you've been adopted to this family, you must know what's clean, what's unclean, what you eat, what you do not eat. As an example. And the third aspect that we need to look at when we come to the importance of knowing who the true YSHRAL is and the true promised land has to do with the appointed times of Yahuwah, which is found in the book of Leviticus, or the book of Louis, otherwise known as Leviticus chapter 23. These appointed times of Yahuwah must be observed according to the seasons of the land that was promised to Abraham's seed. I'm going to repeat that again, it's very important. The appointed times of Yahuwah, the calendar that must be followed, the seasons that must be followed, the timing that must be followed, the time zone, if you were to look at that, must be according to the promised land. Because if you think about it, seasons happens at different times. A typical example is just between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. The specific time of planting certain anything, by the way, not even certain plants, anything that you're planting in the northern and the southern hemisphere, the timing of planting and the timing of harvest differs. Approximately, you're looking at 6 months as a result of the opposite season that you're looking at. If you quickly Google when is barley abib, or when is it ripe in the northern hemisphere, it's not the same time as it is in the southern hemisphere. And you see an example there of about 6 months difference between the two. So knowing then the promised land, because the appointed times of Yahuwah as stated in Leviticus 23 are in line, or they must be followed according to the land that Yahuwah gave, moved from promise to giving to the seed of Abraham, being YSHRAL. Let's look at the book of Shamut, or Exodus chapter 12 verse 1 to 2. Shamut, or Exodus chapter 12 verse 1 to 2, and it reads, "And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, otherwise known as Moses, and to Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, saying, This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you." Now remember, Leviticus 23 tells us that what are the appointed times you are to observe in the first month, in the seventh month. So how are you going to know when the first month is? How are you going to know when the seventh month is? Yahweh told them that how they would know that the beginning of the months. He says, this month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. This is in Shemot or Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 to 2. Now, any person could say, okay, but if you just say first month, we don't know which timing, which in terms of the calendar, where was it at, which one was the first month. But he's specific. And then he says in the next chapter, Shemot or Exodus chapter 13, he says, Shemot or Exodus chapter 13 from verse 4 to 5, it says, today you are going out. When is it today? In the month Abib. So in the month Abib, when barley is Abib, that is the first month to you. So you know the beginning of the month is when the barley is Abib. And like I said earlier on, the barley will not be Abib at the same time in the northern hemisphere as it would be in the southern hemisphere. You're looking at about a 6 months gap, 6 months different. But the calendar that you must follow is according to the timing that you must be followed. It must be according to the land that was given to the seed of Abraham, which is YSHRAL. That's the calendar. That's the time that you must follow. And it says, and it shall be, Yahweh continues to say, and it shall be when Yahweh brings you into the land. So when you get, in as much as, if we think about it, Egypt is in the northern hemisphere. And as they were in the northern hemisphere, he said to them, today is the first month for you. He says, today you are going out, and as you are going out, it is the month Abib. That was in the northern hemisphere. But he then says to them, when you come to the land, when Yahweh brings you into the land which he promised to your forefathers, the land which he promised to your father Abram, the land of the Canaanites, of the Kittites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, the goods which he sold to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in the month. So you must now, moving from the northern hemisphere to where the land is, which we're going to prove through these teachings, where the land is, that you will see that it's not in the northern hemisphere, that it calls for a different the season is different from where the way in Egypt being in the northern hemisphere. So then if you're not following that part, then you are even missing out on the appointed times, because you are following the wrong land. And that's why I said earlier on, it matters where the promised land is, because it's gonna even implication as far as the appointed times that you need to follow. So that is the aspect that also becomes important, that you cannot say that it doesn't matter. It matters where the promised land is, because the appointed times of Yahweh, they are linked also to that land, because as they were leaving Egypt, when they got into the land, they had to observe the appointed times, being guided by the first month of the year, or the first month of the months being the month of Abib, where barley is Abib. We'll then be closing with the fourth, as I said, that we'll be looking at the 4 points. The fourth point that you're going to be looking at is in also emphasizing that it matters who the true YSHRAL is, who the true seed that was promised to Abram, and the true land that was promised to Abram, because there's so many prophecies that are linked. There are so many prophecies that are linked to the people promised to Abram, as well as to the land itself that was promised to Abram. certain of those promises have been fulfilled, but certain still has to be fulfilled. So if you do not know who the true seed that was promised to Abraham is, who the true Yisrael is, you're going to be looking for fulfillment in the wrong places, from the wrong people. And people are going to be lying to you, saying that certain full prophecies have been fulfilled, which they haven't, because you're looking at the wrong people. And they're going to be saying certain prophecies have been fulfilled because they're looking to the wrong land. Meanwhile, those prophecies still need to be fulfilled. And that's why it is important that we know who the people are and who the land that was given to these people is. That's the whole point. And we find when we read in the Tanakh, and then, by the way, Tanakh is literally an acronym of 4 letters, of 3 letters, T, N, and K. T standing for Torah or instructions, N standing for Nabim or prophets, and then K standing for Katubim or writings. So when we look at the word of Yahuwah holistically, it is made up of the Torah, it's made up of the Torah or the instruction, it's made up of the prophets or the Nabim, it's made up of the Katubim or the writings, which the word, the acronym Tanakh comes from. So these prophecies that some have been fulfilled, but there's so many that are yet to be fulfilled. You would miss them if you are looking at the wrong people and in the wrong land, because these prophecies, they're linked to the people and to the land, to the promised seed being Yisrael, as well as to the promised land that was allocated to Yisrael. And therefore, as we conclude and we close in today's teaching, it is for these reasons that are obviously not exhaustive. There's so many other reasons, but just from the ones that I went through today, that it is very important to know the true seed of Abraham, to know the true Yisrael, as well as to know the land that was not only promised to Abraham, but Yisrael accessed that land, inherited that land as they were led by Yahusha, the son of Nun, or otherwise known as Joshua, as they were led by Joshua. They then lost that land. What happened? How did they lose the land? How they were then taken captive, and how the promises that just speaks about them being scattered as a result of disobedience, as mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28. What will happen if they repent? How would Yahuwah gather them from the 4 corners of the earth and bring them into that land? That prophecy still needs to be fulfilled. So it is important to know who these people are. Where is this land that they're going to be gathered into? And that's what we're going to be leaving this teaching today at, and then we'll be continuing on this information. Remember, we have perished for lack of knowledge. Remember that the truth will make us free. Remember that we are now living in the times where anything that was kept secret is now being revealed. Anything that was hidden is now being exposed. And we are going to shout out on the rooftop and declare the truth, and speak even as Yahuwah not only shows us this information, but tells us and reveals to us this information. Shalom.